Chapter 531 Breaking In. The raid starts. The spirit eyes had 7 rings, while the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion had 8. The rings of 2 different colors interchanged as they shone brilliantly. In the next instant, Hua Yua transformed into a gigantic eye that was floating in midair. A deep melodic chanting sound began as the higher-ups who were waiting on the observation deck returned to their legions. The Eye of the Asura. Yes, this was the Eye of the Asura. The soul masters from the 3 different legions were all screaming inside with excitement. 9 huge black doors slowly opened before the observation deck. Actually, this was not the limit of Hua Yua's ability. It was just unnecessary for him to use all of his abilities. Get ready to enter. Hua Yua's voice reverberated across the military drill ground. The Heavy Artillery Soul Engineer Legion, the least mobile legion, was the first to move. They also happened to be the unit under Hua Yua. Under the control of the Soul Engineers, the 300 Juga Divine crossbow cannons rolled towards the huge doors. After the repeated improvements Sun Wen had made, these crossbow cannons now had tracks. When necessary, they were able to use their stored soul power to drive themselves forward. Even though their speed was still fairly limited, it was a lot better than having to rely on human strength all the time. It took a whole 10 minutes for the 300 crossbow cannons to fully enter the black doors into the spectral demiplane. While they were slowly entering, 200 figures had already activated their flying type soul tools and were levitating in midair. This was none other than the Tang Clan Soul Engineer Legion, the only legion which possessed flight capabilities. The Fort Soul Engineer Legion spread out into a fan shape as every single all-terrain self-driving fort fully extended their long legs. Compared to the Heavy Artillery Soul Engineer Legion, they were a lot more agile and mobile. They formed a fan shape and guarded the 9 huge doors as though they were the sweepers of the team. A few people stood at a corner of the military drill ground. As they watched the scene unfold before them, they could not help but nod. After these 2 years of rigorous training, these 3 legions now finally possessed true fighting power. It would depend on the commander as to how they would actually perform on the battlefield. After the Heavy Artillery Soul Engineer Legion entered, it was the Fort Soul Engineer Legion's turn. They were a lot faster, and it took them only 4 minutes to enter. Last but not least was the Tang Clan Soul Engineer Legion. They flew in from the top in an organized fashion, and only took 2 minutes. In total, the 3 legions, which contained 2,700 people, took 16 minutes to completely enter Hua Yua's spectral demiplane. If one were to add in the time which Hua Yua used to chant the incantations, they would have used 20 minutes in total. This meant that they would be able to retreat from anywhere in 20 minutes. This was definitely contingent on Hua Yua's ability to escape detection, which had already been tested during his countless forays on the battlefield. After the 9 black doors were closed, the military drill ground returned to its formerly quiet state. One could only tell that there were many soul masters here previously from the tracks the heavy artillery and forts left on the ground. The Eye of the Asura morphed back into Hua Yua's figure. After landing on the ground, he moved towards the group of individuals who were standing under the tree at the corner of the military drill ground. The leader amongst them was none other than Elder Sun. The 2 deans, Yan Shaosh and Shenliner, were standing by his side. Elder Sun. Hua Yua greeted politely. Elder Sun nodded and said, "The ball is now in your court. Let's hope you can give us a much-needed miracle." Hua Yua smiled. "I am confident that we can pull it off. We will also have to depend on all of you for the battle at the front line." Elder Sun replied, "The Sun Moon Empire might be strong, but do you really think the 3 original empires of the Douluo continent are a joke? It won't be that easy for them to invade us. Anyways, I just received an update this morning. Just as we have predicted, the Sun Moon Empire's army has already entered what was formerly the land of the Heavenly Soul Empire. They are now moving towards the southeast region of the Heavenly Soul Empire." Hua Yua started to break out into a sweat. It seems like time really waits for no man. At the same time, the figure of a lady flitted into his mind. "Juzi, are you still the commander leading the Sun Moon Empire's army? I really don't want to bump into you on the battlefield. Yuao, you can start moving out. Regardless of whether or not you succeed, do your best to bring them back." Elder Sun instructed Hua Yua as he gave him a pat on the shoulder. "Yes." Hua Yua answered politely, following which, he bade goodbye to both Yan Shaosh and Shenliner before flying up into the air. Then, he vanished as he sped towards the Sun Moon Empire. It would take time for the 3 legions to familiarize themselves with and accept their surroundings within the spectral demiplane. However, Hua Yua did not have to be overly concerned with these things. The other higher-ups of the Tang Sect had taken up the responsibility to brief the legions on the spectral demiplane. Also, he had already gotten nearby to chase away the spectral creatures and create a camping area for the 3 legions. At the very least, the Soul Masters would not be able to see any spectral creatures near their camping area. This would naturally make things smoother. Even though they had only left in the morning, by noontime, they had already arrived at the Mingdo mountain range because of how fast Hua Yua was flying. However, the White Tiger Duke was not at the Mingdo mountain range where the Sun Moon Empire's western army was camping. Instead, he had already led his elite troops to the north of the Douluo Empire. This time round, the Sun Moon Empire did not conceal the route they were taking. Hence, the Douluo Empire were also beginning to make preparations after receiving the news of their impending attack. Of course, there were still plenty of troops which camped at the Mingdo mountain range, including 5 legions. Other than the troops, Princess Juju was also here. "Yuao? How come you're here?" Princess Juju was extremely happy to see Hua Yua. As time passed, Hua Yua had started to gain the recognition and acknowledgement of the higher-ups in the different empires after showcasing his abilities. Besides, Hua Yua was still holding out for the title of Duke of the Douluo Empire. After sitting down with Princess Juju in the tent, Hua Yua asked, "Your Highness, do you have the latest news?" Princess Juju said, "I do have some news, but it might not be extremely accurate. The only thing that is certain is that the Sun Moon Empire has assembled over 300,000 soldiers for their armies. It seems like all of them have been transported into the Heavenly Soul Empire. From the looks of it, they are probably going to link up with the troops that are already within the Heavenly Soul Empire. As to what they will do next, we have no reliable intelligence on that. Other than this, the Sun Moon Empire has strengthened their defenses at the borders of their land. In fact, they have placed at least 2 Soul Engineer legions on the other side of the Mingdo mountain range to supplement their aerial surveillance soul tools and existing troops. With their new setup, we can't even send a fly in to do any reconnaissance work. Yuao, since you are here already, do you mind helping us do some reconnaissance work?" Even though he was looking into the princess's hopeful eyes, Hua Yua shook his head and replied, "Your Highness, I am sorry, but I do have another mission at hand. However, I can help you solve some of your reconnaissance problems." Following which, Hua Yua gave her a sly smile. Princess Juju seemed to have caught what Hua Yua was hinting as she said, "That would be great. However, I must let you know how sly their surveillance soul tools have become. They do not only possess a greater range, but also greater mobility and speed. They will flee the moment they detect any dubious movement. At the same time, the other soul tools in the area will stop any attempt from the enemy to intercept the surveillance soul tool. Hence, this will be a challenging task. We have tried to use soul cannon shells to bomb the surveillance soul tools multiple times, to no avail." Hua Yua said, "These are probably the best prevention methods they can employ. But rest assured, I have my ways. Even though I won't be able to destroy all of them, I am confident I can take down at least some of them." Princess Juju was evidently excited by Hua Yua's reply. "That would be great. If we can give the Sun Moon Empire some pressure from here, the battle at the front line will be a lot easier for our people." Hua Yua said, "Then I shall begin to make my move. Afterwards, we will be inserting ourselves into the Sun Moon Empire to continue our battle. Goodbye, Your Majesty." After bidding her goodbye, both Hua Yua and Princess Juju stood up. She moved closer to Hua Yua and looked at him with an inexplicable look. She said, "Yuao, you are truly the most outstanding youth I've ever seen. The Douluo Empire will forever be your home. As long as you wish for it, the Empire can give you all the honor and glory you might want." Hua Yua smiled. "In that case, if this operation were to be completed successfully, I shall return to ask for the title of Duke from Your Majesty." Princess Juju was a little shocked by Hua Yua's request. It was not the first time that he had asked about this title. However, he had never asked for anything other than the title, not even a plot of land. Why is he so persistent about the title? Of course, it was still more reassuring to know that he wanted something, instead of not wanting anything at all. Shu Juju said, "Yuao, what is your mission actually about? Can you tell me?" Hua Yua hesitated for a short while before replying. "I am leading some troops to perform a sabotage operation within the Sun Moon Empire just like the Duke did previously. If we succeed, I am confident that we can threaten the foundation of the Sun Moon Empire and alleviate the pressure on our troops at the front line." It was apparent that the White Tiger Duke had not informed Shu Juju of this plan. After hearing Hua Yua's words, Shu Juju was very much taken aback. "You are going to bring an entire army into the Sun Moon Empire? Are they from the Shrek City Defense Army?" Hua Yua nodded and replied, "Pretty much. However, they are stronger than the defense army. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to reveal any more information. I just hope I can bring back good news soon." "All right. I'll see you around, Your Highness. Shu Juju saw Huo Yue to the edge of the main peak and watched him take off until his figure disappeared in the sky. Her emotions, which had been suppressed for the past few days, seemed to have relaxed a little. She clenched her fists and muttered to herself, "Good luck, Yuao." Of course, Huo Yue would not share the secret of his spectral demiplane with Shu Juju, even though there would be a lot of people who would learn of his spectral plane after the war ended. He still believed he should keep it a secret, at least for the time being. As he became stronger, some of the things that he had to be extremely careful with before could now be treated with less caution. As a faint glow flashed on his body, Huo Yue projected an ice gold beam from his face. While he was flying, he had already unleashed his spiritual detection ability to search for the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance soul tools, which were hiding somewhere in the sky. The current surveillance soul tool setup used by the Sun Moon Empire was very different from the one they had used previously. These soul tools were completely separated and spaced out. Even though they were able to cover a huge range, their arrangement was not in an extremely predictable pattern. In fact, the Sun Moon Empire had employed a dual surveillance method by performing surveillance from both the land and the air. The overlapping of their surveillance range would increase the chances of detecting enemy movement and guarantee better safety. Almost every surveillance soul tool was protected by a soul tool on the land, and the aerial surveillance soul tools were also acting as a radar for the soul tools on the ground. Hence, it could be said that they were highly complementary and would help improve their security to a huge extent. Nowadays, there were linked soul tools wherever soul tools were stationed in the Sun Moon Empire. These linked soul tools could perform both offensive and defensive operations. When it came to their offensive capabilities, they could kill a tidal Douluo in a split second. This was why linked soul tools were extremely scary. Because of their overwhelming power, even the powerful body Sect could not stop the advance of the Sun Moon Empire. Because the Sun Moon Empire had stepped up their security at the Mingdong mountain range, neither the White Tiger Duke nor Princess Juju could do anything to the Sun Moon Empire. If a large army were to attempt to penetrate these lines of soul tools, they would still be able to do so. Nonetheless, they would have to deal with large numbers of casualties. In addition, they would not know what kind of security would be stationed in an ambush position due to the impossibility of doing any form of reconnaissance. Falling into an ambush after sustaining heavy losses from penetrating the thick lines of soul tools would be a cost even the Dalu Empire could not undertake. Hence, the White Tiger Duke opted to defend the Mingdong mountain range instead of taking the risk to attack. Huo Yue's spiritual detection was ultimately limited and could only detect a large party of troops. He could not get a complete picture of all the troops near the perimeter of the Sun Moon Empire. Nonetheless, this would not affect his mission. Of course, Huo Yue would not be foolish enough to attack those aerial surveillance tools. He would simply become a target for the soul tools lined up beneath him. In fact, they would not even have to take aim at him. They simply had to shoot upwards into the sky, and he would be in an extremely precarious position. One must remember that Huo Yue was not fighting alone. After going around the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance tools, Huo Yue flew straight into the Sun Moon Empire. He went straight to the nearest station where the Sun Moon Empire had set up a series of soul tools. He went up to them in an extremely delicate fashion before circling to the back of the area. He took a moment to use his spiritual detection to analyze the landscape of this station before finding a gap to get closer to them. From his spiritual detection, Huo Yue was able to tell that this station had over 100 offensive soul tools and several types of soul tools which could help with surveillance, defense, and auxiliary work. Outside of the station, there were 5,000 normal soldiers who were tasked with defending this soul tool formation. The interior of the station was primarily manned by a few soul engineers. Their numbers were not very large, just over 100 people. It was apparent that the soul tools were running on sealed milk bottles. The soul engineers simply had to control their daily consumption. After all, the most demanding soul tools were the offensive and defensive ones, and they did not have to be operated that often. After surveying the surroundings of this station, Huo Yue silently crept away and retreated to a blind spot where the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance soul tools would not be able to detect him. He chanted a few incantations and opened his spectral demiplane. After entering the demiplane, Huo Yue met up with his companions and shared his plan. After listening to his plan, all of them agreed to it, and the 9 black doors soon opened in an inconspicuous forest, and the heavy artillery started to roll out. Yes, it was none other than Huo Yue's heavy artillery soul engineer legion. The 300 Juga divine crossbow cannons were able to line up in an organized fashion very quickly as they waited for orders to be issued. It was only now that they realized they had already arrived at the Sun Moon Empire in such a short amount of time. They were feeling both excited and amazed by this revelation. The higher ups of the Tang Sect also emerged from the spectral demiplane. Tang Wutong naturally moved to Huo Yue's side. Huo Yue announced, "I want everyone to get ready to attack. Eldest senior brother, Wutong and I will head over to the station where the soul tools are. After sabotaging them, we will immediately return." Bei Bei nodded and said, "All right, take care." Huo Yue held Tang Wutong's hand as he activated imitation. He started to creep towards the place where the soul tools were stationed. The soul tools stationed in that area were in fact very sensitive. However, their surveillance ability was limited to a certain range. To put it simply, their surveillance was useless on soldiers outside those ranges. Hence, those surveillance soul tools were primarily used to keep watch on movement in the sky. When it came to watching the ground, that was the responsibility of the aerial surveillance soul tools. After Huo Yue's spiritual power evolved again, oscillation detectors were no longer useful against him. He could use his spiritual power to detect any oscillation waves that were headed in his direction. He was also able to use his ultimate eyes to change the temperature around him to avoid detection by thermal detectors. Hence, it was extremely hard for any soul tools to detect him. He was only vulnerable to the extremely rare spiritual power detectors and soul power detectors. These two detectors were extremely limited, as they could only detect fluctuations within an extremely short range. Hence, Huo Yue and Tang Wutong could enter the camp of the normal soldiers without being detected. Right now, it was the middle of the afternoon. After lunch, the 5,000 soldiers were taking their afternoon breaks. The lives of soldiers tended to be a lot more relaxed when they were not in the middle of a war. Their routine usually included some training in the morning, breaks in the afternoon and patrols in the evening. As they went through the camp, they started to get closer to the place where the soul tools were stationed. "Yuao, what should we do now?" Huo Yue replied, "There are only about 100 soul engineers inside. The strongest one is but a 7-ring soul sage. I believe he has yet to attain the level of a class 7 soul engineer. Nonetheless, this area is enveloped by surveillance from soul power detectors and spiritual power detectors. The soul engineers in this area must be carrying some sort of pass which allows them to roam around without being mistaken as an enemy. We would probably get found out the moment we stepped into the area. However, the soul tools in this area seem to be heavy weapons. Even though they might be very destructive and can activate the powers of linked soul tools, they probably won't be able to unleash their powers within the area." Tang Wutong immediately caught what Huo Yue was hinting at. "We are going to rush in." Huo Yue flashed her a smile. "What are we waiting for? Let's go." After he finished his sentence, Huo Yue grabbed Tang Wutong's hand and dashed into the area like a lightning bolt. His eyes turned brilliant golden the moment he stepped into the area where the soul tools were stationed. Huo Yue might have twin martial souls and an ultimate strength martial soul, but the most frightening thing about him was not his fighting power. It was his invincible reconnaissance ability. Even though there were plenty of surveillance soul tools and even some spiritual power detectors within the area, they were unable to stop Huo Yue's ability from scanning the entire camp. Huo Yue immediately grasped the locations of all the different soul engineers within this area. This information would be extremely helpful for his subsequent actions. The place that Huo Yue had chosen to enter first was the resting area for the soul engineers who were in charge of protecting and controlling the soul tools. The resting area was placed in the center of the camp in order to protect them. Huo Yue dashed straight towards the center of the camp with both of his eyes shining with a golden color. The daily maintenance and surveillance work for the area did not require many people. It was only during war when they required everyone to be working at any point in time. Hence, most of the soul engineers were congregated at the resting area. That was why Huo Yue chose to strike this area first. At the very instant when he stepped into the camp, a mysterious spiritual ripple spread out from his body. He was immediately detected by the spiritual power detectors as the alarm within the camp went off. However, this would not be sufficient to stop him. Huo Yue activated his Eye of Destiny as his spiritual power was increased to its maximum. At this very instant, the entire resting area was within his control. As the saying went, a commander must not go easy on the enemy soldiers. As the chief commander of Shrek City's 3 soul engineer legions, he had to be responsible for the safety of his troops, and more importantly, the hope and future of 3 empires. Hence, he must not be merciful against these soul engineers. After hearing the deafening alarm, the soul engineers within the resting area jumped up. However, an overwhelming spiritual power attacked them from within their minds. Spiritual blast. Huo Yuao's spiritual power was almost invincible. Even Du Buxi had commended him on his spiritual power, which was on par with that of a transcendent Douluo, before his death. With Tang Wutong's support and their Haodong power, his spiritual power had received another significant boost. This was Huo Yuao's first time performing such a powerful spiritual blast. A loud explosion could be heard from within the resting area. The explosion sound came from the heads of the Soul Engineers. All their heads had exploded from Huo Yuao's spiritual blast. At this very instant, all 50 Soul Engineers who were resting in the resting area had been killed. It was only now that the whole camp started to react to what had just happened. The linked soul tools started to establish a defensive barrier to cordon the area off from the rest of the world. It was a logical move for them to contain the intruders since there were only 2 people. Based on their calculations, it should be relatively easy to capture or kill them. Little did they expect their enemies to be so powerful. After unleashing a spiritual blast, Huo Yuao did not wait around. He grabbed Tang Wutong and flickered around the camp like a ghost. There were many defensive soul tools within the camp which were specially designed to fight against intruders. They shot several laser beams towards Huo Yuao and Tang Wutong, but they just couldn't hit the couple who were flickering around in the camp. Huo Yuao was not only capable of predicting where the beams would go because of his spiritual detection ability, but was also a class 9 soul engineer. He had long discovered the flaws in the arrangements of these soul tools. The biggest problem with these defensive soul tools was how they were arranged in a way so as to minimize damage to the soul tools within the camp. On top of this, their power was limited to protect the soldiers. This resulted in countless blind spots, which Huo Yuao and Tang Wutong gladly took advantage of. With his spiritual blast as a continuous ranged attacks, Huo Yuao was able to unleash his powerful attacks without even seeing the soul engineers. The most powerful soul engineer among them was only a 7-ring soul sage. Their self-defense soul tools were mainly focused on protecting against attacks which were physical or soul power based. Not everyone could be equipped with high-class soul tools which could protect him against spiritual attacks. Other than the 7-ring soul sage, which required Huo Yuao to kill him with spiritual shock, the rest of them perished under Huo Yuao's spiritual blast. Spiritual attacks were no doubt the most effective way to kill soul engineers. It took them only a couple of minutes to kill all of them. In the end, Huo Yuao and Tang Wutong were the only ones still alive within the camp. Following which, Huo Yuao entered the core area of the camp and shut down Link's defensive system with the help of his understanding of soul tools as a class 9 soul engineer. The soldiers who were camped outside had already erupted into chaos. However, they did not dare to enter the area where the soul tools were stationed after the Link's defensive system had vanished. The soul engineers in the camp were held in great esteem by the soldiers. Besides, there were already orders given to not enter the area unless they were given permission by the soul engineers. One must understand that any of the soul engineers would have a higher rank than the commanders amongst the soldiers. Soul engineers had extremely high social statuses in the Sun Moon Empire. After completing their sabotage work, Huo Yuao concealed himself and Tang Wutong as they snuck out of the area where the soul tools were stationed. Following which, they accelerated through the air with their class 9 flying soul tools and returned to where they had hidden the heavy artillery soul engineer legion. Number 1 to number 12, listen carefully. I want you to lock onto the coordinates that my spiritual energy is pointing at. Change your shells to class 4 shells and get ready. Because Huo Yuao's voice was projected with his spiritual energy, every single soul engineer in the legion could hear his words clearly. At the same time, Huo Yuao also informed his companions within the spectral demiplane. Following which, the Tang Sect soul engineer legion and the Fort soul engineer legion started to move out from the black doors and line up in their formations quickly. Huo Yuao's eyes were radiating a certain glow as he used his spiritual energy to keep the doors open. Lock onto the position of the aerial surveillance soul tools and fix the coordinates for the artillery with his spiritual sharing ability. He was capable of multitasking and had fully exhibited the importance of his spiritual energy in war. Huo Yuao gazed into the distance as a smile escaped from the corner of his mouth. Following which, 20 of the 300 Juga divine crossbow cannons started to take aim after receiving the coordinates from Huo Yuao's spiritual sharing. At this very instant, Huo Yuao was like their eyes. The long black metallic barrels began their adjustments as they aimed towards the distant sky. After repeated improvements, the current cannons were far more accurate than before. The earliest versions of the cannons had 48 barrels. Because they required 16 barrels for every shot, they could fire 3 times consecutively. Afterwards, they would have to be set aside to cool before they could be used again. Now, regardless of whether it was their cooling mechanisms or their material, the cannons had improved tremendously and could sustain extended periods of continuous firing. The 16 barrels used to only be able to fire in a single direction. However, after Sun Quan improved its design, it was now able to aim in a single direction with just 2 barrels. This would allow the cannon to be a lot more accurate in its firing. Fire! Huo Yuao ordered. At that instant, 20 Juga divine crossbow cannons fired in unison with a deafening belch. 320 class 4 shells ascended into the air instantly as they headed in the direction of the distant sky. Hikaiju was standing by Huo Yuao's side as he grabbed his own chest. The mere thought of the cost of these shells made his heart ache. Those were all stationary soul cannon shells. Even though Huo Yuao's newly researched manufacturing technique had helped to reduce the cost of producing these shells, it still cost a small fortune to launch a few hundred shells at once. Huo Yuao turned his head and smiled at Hikaiju. He said, "Senior brother, don't worry about it. We will not be taking a loss. Those aerial surveillance soul tools have the ability to dodge attacks. If we were to scrimp on the shells, there might not be enough to destroy them." While they were speaking, a deafening explosion could be heard from the distant sky. Several balls of fire could be seen in the background. Because it was the middle of the day, the fireballs were not too obvious. However, it was still apparent enough that the balls of fire were not just timed explosions. We hit them. Hikaiju waved his fist in excitement. Huo Yuao nodded and said, "We have managed to clear all 100 aerial surveillance soul tools in the vicinity. Senior brother, lead the Fort Soul Engineer Legion to clear up the camp I have just returned from. I have left plenty of spoils for you there." The aerial surveillance soul tools were useless to Huo Yuao. They were of no use for the mission he was leading. In fact, Huo Yuao was probably better than all those soul tools when it came to surveillance and reconnaissance work. However, the soul tools in the camp were different. They were all high-quality heavy weapons, the fruits of the labor and research the Sun Moon Empire had done. In fact, such areas would usually contain precious resources like the sealed milk bottles. They should also have plenty of stationary soul cannon shells. Even if this area did not have the strongest soul tools, they should still have an abundance of resources. After hearing Huo Yuao's words, Hikaiju immediately understood what he meant. Following which, he joyfully led the Fort Soul Engineer Legion to collect their spoils. However, it was not just him who headed out. Bei was also moving out with the Tang Sect Soul Engineer Legion. Even though the 3 legions had trained for a long period of time, they had still not fought any battles in their capacity as soul engineers. Since this was already a sure victory for them, it would be good for them to go out and experience fighting. It would also be a good way for them to improve their capabilities. The outcome was one which everyone had long expected. There was no other possible outcome when 5,000 normal foot soldiers met 2 Soul Engineer Legions. Under the instructions of Hikaiju and Bei, the Tang Sect Soul Engineer Legion and the Fort Soul Engineer Legion only used non-stationary soul cannon shells, soul rays, and similar expendable items to finish the soldiers off. The entire battle took less than 20 minutes, and the entire army of 5,000 soldiers was obliterated. Without the protection of soul tools, these soldiers had pretty much no capabilities on the battlefield. While they were destroying the soldiers and collecting the spoils, Huo Yuao had already ordered his heavy artillery Soul Engineer Legion to return into the spectral demiplane. It was best for them to return first, since they were the slowest legion. After they had returned, it would be easier for Huo Yuao to make his next move. Even though it was fairly tedious to disassemble the heavy weapons, the Legion of Soul Engineers found it relatively easy with the help of the all-terrain self-driving forts. They first began to clear up the leftover supplies before disassembling the heavy soul tools. Huo Yuao grabbed Tang Wutong as both of them floated in midair. Huo Yuao was observing the disassembly process while using his spiritual energy to detect any enemy movement in the distance. Tang Wutong smiled. "Seems like it isn't too difficult to deal with the Sun Moon Empire." Huo Yuao replied, "This is but the start. Besides, the explosions in the air earlier must have alerted the other nearby camps. Their assistance is probably late because of the precautionary measures they have to take in the long distance from their camps to this one. We must leave the moment I detect any movement from them." Tang Wutong asked, "Then what do we do with the equipment we can't bring along with us in time? Who are you? Our smile before replying. We will of course destroy it. We can't leave it behind for them to use. Tang Clan said, even if their reinforcements were to arrive, they would probably lose to us too. Logically speaking, the Sun Moon Empire would not set up their Soul Tool camps with overlapping ranges. Hence, if the other camps can't reach the area here, their Soul Engineers would have no chance against us. Who are you? Shook his head and said, no, we can't assume all of that. Firstly, we can't afford to lose anyone. We only have this number of people. Hence, I cannot risk any of their lives. Not even a single one of them. I would rather we lose out on some of the spoils than give the enemy a chance to deal damage to us. Besides, there is also the possibility of us getting tangled in the combat and losing the chance to retreat. This is near the front line, so there must be plenty of troops from the Sun Moon Empire around. Once we get caught in battle, our plan will have failed. Hence, we must strike and leave immediately. We must make sure no one knows the profile of our army. The unknown enemy is often the scariest enemy. Our main goal is to exert pressure on the Sun Moon Empire. Oh. They're here. Who are you? Solemnly gave the signal to begin retreating. The fellows from Tang Sect had spent so much time together, because Who are you had been the main control type Soulmaster all along. They reacted according to his warnings without any hesitation. After taking everything they had dismantled, the all-terrain self-driving fort started to shoot soul rays at the soul tools which they were unable to take with them. In a short amount of time, they transformed the soul tool camp into ruins. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.